Hey guys, and welcome to Anchor to Truth. Tonight we are diving into chapter 5 in the book of Jubilees.
All right, let's do it. Verse 1, it says, It came to pass when the children of men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born unto them, that the angels of Elohim saw them on a certain year of this Jubilee, that they were beautiful to look upon, and they took themselves wives of all whom they chose, and they bare unto them sons, and they were giants. Verse 2 says, And lawlessness increased on the earth, and all flesh corrupted its way, alike men and cattle and beasts and birds and everything that walketh on the earth, all of them corrupted their ways and their orders. And they began to devour each other, and lawlessness increased on the earth, and every imagination of the thoughts of men, thus evil continually.
So far what we've got here in the book of Jubilees seems to be kind of a retelling of what we hear of in the book of Genesis. Maybe a little additional detail here and there.
Well, it does say that everything that walketh on the earth, all of them corrupted their ways and their orders. And so when we talk about the orders, we like what's an order? You know, God, when he created everything in Genesis, says, and this was created after its own kind, this after its own kind, you know, from the animals to the trees, the vegetation, everything created after its own kind. So it's telling me that there's something was going on during this time of the angels' rebellion, teaching men things they didn't need to teach them. And so everything was out of its order, especially with the giants and them taking women as their wives. You know, it corrupted the order in which God had established from the beginning for men to be fruitful, or for everyone to be fruitful and multiply on the face of the earth.
Yeah, and one of the quick things that I wanted to bring in was just that as it starts to tell the story and it gives us a time frame, it says on a certain year of this Jubilee. So we don't get an exact date here, which is kind of a departure from how it's gone so far. So I find that to be interesting, and maybe we'll get some clarification further in, or it's veiled for a reason. Not sure yet, but I thought that was interesting to bring up.
Also, right here, guys, just to make sure we have a reference right over here. So this is a reference to Genesis 6, verse 12, where all this is can be read about.
And also if you're familiar with the book of Enoch, chapter 7:5, Genesis 6:5, and like Kyle said, you can see all the references as we go through this together. So let's continue with verse 3. And it says, And Elohim looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, and all flesh had corrupted its orders, and all that were upon the earth had wrought all manner of evil before his eyes. And he said, I shall destroy man and all flesh upon the face of the earth, which I have created. But Noah found grace before the eyes of Yahuwah. And against the angels whom he had sent upon the earth, he was exceedingly wroth, and he gave commandment to root them out all of their dominion, and he bade us to bind them in the depths of the earth. And behold, they were bound in the midst of them, and are kept separate.
Verse 6, and against the angels whom he had sent upon the earth. So again, these were the watcher angels. These were the angels that he sent down to minister unto mankind, right? To help us out, help us keep the commandments, keep the command, keep the order that the Father put in place for us, right? To do the right things righteously. And against the angels he had sent upon the earth, he was exceedingly wroth, because they did not stick to what they were supposed to be doing. And he gave commandment to root them out of all their dominion. So anything that they had control over, took them out. He bade us to bind them in the depths of the earth. So who is he giving this commandment to? Who did he bade to bind them in the depths of the earth?
Yeah, my best estimation is going to be the angels, especially because they're the ones that are, showing up on the scene. They're the ones who are, giving this message in the first place. So they're speaking, right. I think, just first person there.
Yeah,
That's
and
right.
I would also go as far to say in the book of Enoch, it's not just any angel; it's actually an archangel. That's the one that's binding them in the earth. So God sends one of the heavy hitters in.
So it says to bind them in the depths of the earth, and behold, they are bound in the midst of them and are kept separate. What do you think that means?
Well, I'll give you my first take on it. I'm looking at a lot of the stories we do get in Genesis and in other areas in Scripture where we hear about Sheol and Abraham's bosom, and many things that are going on below the earth or under the earth or in the midst of the earth. However they decide to word it. And this is a separate place. So there's one place for judgment, and then there's another place where it seems like God has a very, not only was he upset because he said he was exceedingly wroth with them, but he's putting them aside for a separate designation. And he wanted to ensure that they didn't have any other communication with anybody else or weren't lumped into another group. They did their own sin for their own punishment, and he wants to keep them separate for that reason, in my mind.
Yes, and I would add my 2 cents into this also and say that this could be two different scenarios that could play out here. One being they are placed in Sheol and they're placed on the other side of Sheol, not with God's people that are being kept, but on the bad side of Sheol. Also, we can look at this from another angle. Also, when it says that they are kept separate, means they are completely kept separate from everybody, everything. Enoch, if you go into that, will kind of give more explanation into the different places that the fallen angels were placed and bound into the earth with rocks and under mountains and different things as such. So, a couple of different ways to look at it, but we may come back and look at it another time.
All right, good deal.
All right. And verse 7 says, "And against their sons went forth a command from before his face that they should be smitten with the sword and be removed from under heaven. And he said, Thy spirit will not always abide on man, for they are also our flesh, and their days shall be 120 years."
So two things. One, it's talking about, it says, and against their sons went forth the command from before his face that they should be smitten with the sword. So in other words, all the offspring of these fallen angels,
Yeah.
these hybrids, these abominations before God, Nephilim, if you want to call them, the command went out that they were to be killed with the sword and removed from under heaven. And then in verse 8, and he said, thy spirit will not always abide on man, for they also are flesh, and their days shall be 120 years. A lot of people look at this verse here and think that means, oh, well, that means mankind's not going to live past 120 years old after this. But we have examples of people doing that. So
Mm-hmm.
if that was what God meant, that's exactly what would have happened. However, what we can find here when we do a little bit of digging and we go down these timelines of what is happening, we can see that 120 years is the time frame from the time that he said this was going to happen to the time of the flood, where everything was wiped out. So,
Yep, I agree with that.
And you got to imagine there's some pretty big battles going on here. You've got giants versus man. You've got giants eating people, or however that plays out in different scripture.
yeah.
And you see there's just going to be a massive amount of bloodshed throughout all of this, and you can kind of see where God's character comes in. He's it's always in a savior mode. He's not there to destroy the world. He's here to save Noah and his sons. And the family that comes with him. So it's just another beautiful picture of, even though we've fallen, and in this case the watchers have fallen, he always has a plan of salvation. He always has a plan for protection, and we get to see that picture played out here shortly.
And hey guys, this is a great time to remind you that if you're getting some good information out of this content, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this in the future.
All right, in verse 9 it says, "And he sent his sword into their midst, that he should slay his neighbor, and they began to slay each other till they all fell by the sword and were destroyed from the earth." Verse 10 says, "And their fathers were witnesses of their destruction, and after this they were bound in the depths of the earth forever, until the day of the great condemnation, when judgment is executed on all those who have corrupted their ways and their works before Yahuwah."
So in verses 9 and 10, we see where that gets carried out. His sword, he sent his sword into their midst, that each should slay his neighbor, and they began to slay each other until they all fell by the sword and were destroyed from the earth. So all of these giants at this point were slain, like they're done.
Yep.
And then in verse 10, it says, and their fathers were witnesses of their destruction, and after this they were bound in the depths of the earth forever, until the day of great condemnation, when judgment is executed upon all those who have corrupted their ways and their works before Yahuwah. So In other words, while this was happening, while all this was happening, these Nephilim, these giants, were turned against each other to slay one another. While all this was happening, the fallen angels had to witness their offspring killing each other. They had to watch all of this unfold, and then once all that was done, then they get bound in the depths forever until the day of great condemnation. So we have a forever here, but we have a forever until this happens. In other words, there's not going to be ifs, ands, or buts. This is a thing that they are locked in this place until that time. They are not coming out until that appointed time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was according to the book of Enoch. That was part of the Watcher's punishment. Was God had them to witness the death of all their offspring.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
And I think the other reason that this detail is put in here for us, obviously for us to kind of understand what happened in the history of, Bible and theology, but I think it's also in there for a bit of encouragement for us, believers that have lived since this time. This is not a worry that we're going to have to deal with. This is not, God's not telling us, hey, there's not going to be giants running around anymore in the same way that they were back then. There's not going to be, watchers are going to come sneak out of the abyss and come to attack you or try to mate with women again. That season is over. That ability, that option is no longer on the table.
Right.
And then so that way we can really remove that from a lot of the potential issues that we could run into. Yeah, we might have run into this presence or that demon or this situation, but we know that it's not going to be this in particular, and it's laid out very clearly for us, like Kyle said, that it's forever until. So until that date, nothing of this is going to happen again.
Right. And so that's one of the things that I really love about the book of Jubilees is it does give clarity to those pieces that seem to be missing in Genesis. They refer whoever they is, right? They refer to Jubilees as the lesser Genesis. My personal opinion is that Genesis is the lesser Jubilees. Jubilees gives far greater depth of information on these subjects. The details that's laid out it gives you understanding of what actually happened. So if we just read Genesis and we read a passage that says there were giants on the earth in those days and after, well, there's a lot of speculation that can come from that and has over the years, right?
Yep.
That leads people down a lot of trails of, well, where are they? Where is this race of beings that supposedly did they survive the flood? All this stuff. So the purpose of the flood was to wipe this out, right? All this abomination, wipe this off of the face of the earth from before the sight of the Father, right? So either the flood failed, meaning the Father failed, right? For us to speculate and assume that the giants were after this, then the Father failed and that whole thing was pointless, or we're missing information and Jubilees gives it to us. It tells us that they were wiped out, that they were done away with. So then we go back and we look at, I believe we've already addressed it in the book of Jubilees. It tells us there were giants in the earth in those days and after, but that and after was in reference to a specific time frame. In other words, from this time frame to this time frame, there was giants. There was giants on the earth in those days and after that. In other words, up until now. And then they get wiped out. So we get a timeline of things in Jubilees that you just don't get in Genesis. So I love that it removes the speculation.
All right, let's do it. Verse 11. And it says, he destroyed all from their places, and there was not one of them whom he judged not according to all their wickedness. And he made for all his works a new and righteous nature, so that they should not sin in their whole nature forever, but should be all righteous, each in his kind, always.
I definitely want to ask you guys about verse 12, but before we do that, let's address 11. And he destroyed what?
Looks
What's
like
that
all
word?
to me.
All? What does all mean? As Rob Skiba used to say, all means what?
All means all.
All means all, right? He destroyed all from their places, and there was not one left of them whom he judged according to their wickedness. Not what? Not left
Not one.
one. Not one. They were all done away with. All of them. All right. And in verse 12, and he made for all his works a new and righteous nature, so that they should not sin in their whole nature forever, but should be but should be all righteous, each in his kind always. So, what is verse 12 saying to you guys?
Yeah, my hot take on that is just that it's, it's we have that story that we just kind of went through, and we're showing that, man, evil was continual in their hearts always. They were always trying to do wrong. They had nothing. They were fully corrupt. When it says fully corrupt, we get that idea of there's no restoration, there's no salvation, there's no way to come back from the place that they're at. And I know when we read again, like where all the giants and everything they were all destroyed, and we get that language and we're like, oh man, God's so ruthless. How could he go and destroy everything? But when we really break down what those words are saying, he destroyed what was destroyed. Essentially, he just cleaned up a mess. And
Correct.
when we look at it that way, again, like I said, Noah is actually being saved here, not that the world is being destroyed. And it's hard to look at that from our modern nature. How we want to protect everybody and everything. Well, that's all God was doing. He was protecting what he could. He was like, hey, this is all I can protect. Well, I'm going to show providence and my full majesty and glory to save them. And that's where we get a flood, so we get an ark, all these things that we can't do today, people can't recreate today. And he did that just for those guys and girls there. But when I'm reading it, it's showing that they gave them a new righteous nature. So there was a time when it's all evil, all continually evil, super bad. And he's saying now, hey, you're going to get a chance to restart. You're going to have a time when you can, go back to the altar. You can be cleansed of your sin. You can have an opportunity to be perfected, through that process of sanctification, just as Abraham, it was counted to him all for his righteousness. So we have that chance now where we can do things that will get us back in right standing with the Father, where before what was destroyed, it no longer had that ability. So that's what I'm reading there.
Well, I see a couple of things as possibilities here. So, I guess what I'm seeing here is, the Nephilim issue, right? We had this hybridization of the animals. These fallen angels and Nephilim or whatever, they mated with man, they mated with beast, and they corrupted everything, right? All flesh was corrupted. And also, we have to look at the issue of the serpent in the garden, right? So the serpent allowed Hasatan to use his body. So obviously there was a communication going on there, but the serpent had the ability to make that choice. It seems to me like there's a possibility that there's a new and righteous nature so that they should not sin in their whole nature forever. In other words, they don't have the ability to make those choices anymore. Right. And we read about that in previous chapter where it talks about their ability to have reason and all that other stuff. Right. So I just find that kind of interesting. I guess there's a few different directions we can kind of take this. Could it also mean that all the animals that were brought to the ark were new creations? They were new animals because all the other ones were corrupted. Is that a possibility? So we've got a couple of trails we can go down on that one. It's cool to speculate.
I'd love to
Yes, it
see you
is.
guys get into the comment section and give us all the juicy details so we can have some fun talking about it.
Absolutely.
In 13 it says, and the judgment of all is ordained and written on the heavenly tables in the righteousness, even the judgment of all who depart from the path which is ordained for them to walk in. And if they walk not therein, judgment is written down for every creature and for every kind. Verse 14 says, and there is nothing in heaven or on earth, or in light or in darkness, or in Sheol, or in the depth, or in the place of darkness, which is not judged, and all their judgments are ordained and written and engraved.
Mm.
So I'm gonna go ahead and stop on that one because, man, I was just getting just tons and tons and tons of thoughts going, and yeah, so we're kind of getting down of the judgments of all is ordained. So God here is saying in His providence, I'm gonna go ahead and in advance and let you guys know what is what, what happens if you do that, and what it's going to look like for you in the end. And
Right.
sometimes I think, at least for human nature, we need that don't touch because it's hot. And then we have the picture of this is what a burn looks like. If you'd like to engage still, then go ahead. But this is the result. So sometimes when we have the result in advance, it keeps us from making that action. And I think here, God's saying, I'm going to go ahead and write down. And it says he wrote it down for every creature and for every kind.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's something that, I mean, unless you guys are way smarter than I am, that's something that we don't have any knowledge of what animals are thinking or how they could stray from their original creation. And, like, I guess they could start eating food they're not supposed to eat, or, trying to mate with other things. I know we see that with, like, different farm animals like donkeys or whatever, and a mule and a horse, how once you go outside of your natural order, you can't procreate. So I guess there's a little bit of that, just in our natural state of what we can see in front of us. But I think to answer one of our questions we were posing earlier, where it says, in light or in darkness or in Sheol or in the depth or in the place of darkness. So when we get those ors, we're kind of given different places. And so it's not where I see a Sheol or the depth. So I kind of see two different places there. So maybe that'll help shine some light on what we were talking about earlier of where these watchers chained up in Sheol or somewhere else. We almost get an and or here, which looks like it could be a separate place that hasn't been judged yet, but a future judgment is coming. And that's what was written a little bit earlier before this. So we kind of get a good idea of possibility, and, at least from what it's written, of two different places and a future judgment to come for that separated place.
There you go.
All right, let's move on to verse 15. It says, in regard to all, he will judge the great according to his greatness, and the small according to his smallness, and each according to his way. And he is not one who will regard the person of any, nor is he one who will receive gifts. If he say that he will execute judgment on each, if one gave everything that is on the earth, he will not regard the gift or the person or any, nor accept anything at his hands, for he is a righteous judge.
Mm.
Verse 17, and of the children of Israel it hath been written and ordained, if they turn to him in righteousness, he will forgive all their transgressions and pardon all their sins. It is written and ordained that he will show mercy to all who turn from all their guilt once each year. And as for all those who corrupted their ways and their thoughts before the flood, no man's person was accepted saved, that of Noah alone, for his person was accepted in behalf of his sons, whom Elohim saved from the waters of the flood on his account. For his heart was righteous in all his ways, according as it was commanded regarding him, and he had not departed from aught that was ordained from him.
And verse 18, it says, "And it is written and ordained that he will show mercy to all who turn from all their guilt once each year." What's that in reference to, guys?
That is a reference to the Day of Atonement. So verse 20 says, and Yahuwah said that he would destroy everything which was upon the earth, both men and cattle and beast and fowls of the air, and that which moveth on the earth. So in verse 16, I like to bring up a few thoughts in here. It says, and he is not one who will regard the person of any, nor is he one who will receive gifts. And he said that he will execute judgment on each. So it shows me that God is no respecter of any man or of anything.
All right, so I'm kind of looking here, and I see a lot of, like I said, I always look for the smaller details, and it's interesting that in 15 it actually brings up the smallness and the greatness, and so it kind of shows that there's going to be all kinds of people all throughout history, and God doesn't hold any person higher or any person lower based on how they interact with the world and how they've been blessed in the world. It says sometimes the meek will inherit the earth, right? And we're going to have opportunities where not all of us are going to be rich, not all of us are going to be poor, but we all, in our own ways, make up the body of Christ, right? So we're not all going to be an eyeball, or all be a hand, or all be an eye, but we'll all play a very vital role. And God looks at us each individually as His son or daughter, and worth all of His sacrifice of Yeshua on the cross, and Him being the high priest up in heaven. It was all worth it to Him, whether it was great or small. And then even as we get down through 16, He says He's not one to receive any gifts. So, we look at the thought behind that, because at first it's like, oh, well, I want to give gifts to God. That sounds great. But that's because it's in our human mind and our human mentality of how we've interacted with other individuals. And God says, I'm not your brother or your sister. I'm the Almighty. And while you might try to pay off your Norse God, while you might try to pay off your, pagan God, while you may try to pay off these guys to get penances, to get glory, to get rain, whatever it is that we see all throughout history, God says, I'm not about that. I'm the Almighty. I do what I say I'm going to do, and I'm going to execute, again, as it says, his judgment on each. So you don't get to come and bring him a gold bar. You don't get to come and sacrifice your first kid. You don't get to come and do any of these special, unique acts that other gods ask for and get out of judgment, or to get a get out of jail free card. He says, you all are going to get judged according to your works, according to the life that you've had here on earth. And I just love that God is so specific in the way he writes that, is don't treat me like any other God. And we're going to see that as he gives you the 10 commandments. He says, have no other God before me and make no idols. Don't even mess with that stuff. You know who I am. I'm going to tell you what I'm about. I'm going to tell you how to treat me and how to interact with me. And this is how I find love, is when you follow my commandments and obey my instructions. And so here he's giving us instructions. Don't try to give me gifts. That's not what this is about.
Right.
Yeah. And the best part of this too, Jonathan, is not only is he not a respecter of any person, so it doesn't matter if you're great, the least amongst everybody. What's awesome though about our God is that in verse 17 it says, and of the children of Israel it has been written and ordained if they turn to him in righteousness. So again, it's on the flip of the coin, where it doesn't matter if you're the least or greatest in the world. God says, if anyone comes to me humbly, he says, I will forgive all their transgressions and pardon all their sins.
And all means what? All.
And all means all. In verse 18 says, it's written and ordained that he will show mercy to all. And we know what all means. All means all, right? We're going back to Rob Skiba here. It says, he will show mercy to all who turn from their guilt once each year. So we serve a God that says, I don't care who you are, who you think you are. You're not bringing me anything to appease me except for a humble heart that is willing to repent and turn away from your wickedness. So we see it on both sides of the coin. It says, don't matter over here, and it doesn't matter over here. If you come to me, I will forgive transgressions.
Wonderful. It reminds me, if we put it in simplistic terms, let me ask you guys: have you guys ever been re-gifted?
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you?
You know what a better question is to be honest with each other, has any of us ever re-gifted something? I'm gonna raise my hand on that one.
Well, I can promise you that I've never goofed up and re-gifted the same gift back to the person who gave it to me.
Oh yeah, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
Has that ever happened to you, where somebody has
re-gifted
you the gift you gave them?
No, thankfully
no. Oh man. So, I mean, it's all you can do to just hold it in and just be like, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. You told me you enjoyed this so much. So that's kind of how I see that, because the Father provides everything that we have. He provides all good things. So what could we possibly give him? I mean, even the sacrifices that we see about in the tabernacle, the temple, none of those was for him to eat, right? That was for the priesthood and all that kind of stuff, right? He wasn't eating that. So where we have these other little g gods, that people offer meals and all these other things to, it's like, you can't re-gift me. I gave this to you. You can't give this to me. The way you give this, the way you give back to me is by doing for others. You can't outgive God, right? You've probably heard that a million times. That's because
different context.
That's because he gives everything. And if you were to try to give him something, you'd just be re-gifting. Not cool, bro. Not cool.
Well, and you can see, like, again, kind of what you're getting at. You can see the heart of God there, where he's, what's more important to him is how we love one another. But also, he wants to spend time with us. Based on original creation, what did he enjoy? Walking with man, going in the garden in the cool of the day. And he wants that relationship. Well, whenever we're doing these, sacrifices, when we're doing all this stuff, we're not literally, like you said, giving God like presents and gifts and stuff, but we're giving him the gift of our presence, and we're spending time with him.
Right.
And he's like, hey, this is what I always wanted. I wanted true love, which is why I gave you free will in the first place, because I wanted you to love me because you love me, not for any other reason. And when we're having those moments, when we're meeting him once a year, when we're meeting him at each Shabbat, each Sabbath, each Saturday, as we're meeting with him, then he's saying, this is what I always wanted. This is what I kind of expected from my creation. And luckily, one day we'll have that in eternity. But for now, we just have glimpses of it. It's the shadow of things to come. And man, I'm thankful for the shadow. I can't wait for the substance.
What a wonderful way to end part 1. Join us next time for part 2 of chapter 5 of the Book of Jubilees. God bless.
Ciao.
Blessings.
Please do so. Nope.
Kyle likes editing.
Is that going to be for the blooper reel?
I know, right?